On the count of five, four, three, two, one. Hello and welcome to my first million.tv and success coach series, a podcast channel where we talk to successful people from all over the world and learn success secrets from them. I'm Ravi, your host, and I'm thrilled to have with me an inspirational guest today, Kara Goldin, founder and CEO of count of five, four, three, two, one. I am sorry because the YouTube channel on my other tab was open. But as I said, I am thrilled to have with me Kara Goldin, founder CEO of Hint Inc., best known for its award-winning Hint Water, the leading unsweetened flavored water. Kara has won numerous accolades, including EY Entrepreneur of the Year 2017, one of InStyle's 2019 Badass 50 Fast Company's most creative people in business, Fortune's most powerful women entrepreneurs. Huffington Post listed her as one of the six disruptors in business, alongside Steve Jobs and Mark Zuckerberg. Previously, Kara was VP of Shopping and E-commerce at America Online, where she helped lead the growth of its shopping and e-commerce business to over $1 billion in revenue. She's an active speaker and writer, and in 2017, she launched Unstoppable, a podcast where she interviews founders, entrepreneurs, and disruptors across various industries. You can follow her on Twitter at Kara Goldin, where she has a massive following. So, Kara, welcome to my podcast. How are you doing today?
I'm good. Thanks for having me.
The pleasure is mine as well. So, Kara, your book is titled Undaunted. What is your relationship with fear?
My relationship with fear. Well, I think that, first of all, thank you so much for the kind introduction. And you mentioned my product, Hint. I'm the founder and CEO of that. And we're only distributed in the US right now. So for those of you who aren't familiar with Hint, if you can see this little bottle here, we are an unsweetened flavored water. And so what that means is that it doesn't have any sugar in it. We don't have any stevia or any sweeteners in it. It's just fruit and water, and that's it. And so when I started this company 15 years ago, I didn't have any experience in the beverage industry. I came from tech, and I was very curious about why there wasn't an unsweetened flavored water. All of the flavored waters had some sort of sweetener in it. And I had just realized after a little test that I did inside of my kitchen that I had this addiction to diet soda, Diet Coke in particular, and it was making me unhealthy, not as healthy as I wanted to be. So when I finally decided to stop drinking Diet Coke, that's when I lost over 20 pounds in 2.5 weeks. I cleared up my adult acne that I had. And then also my energy levels came back dramatically. And so I thought, gosh, why isn't this product on the shelf? And I thought, maybe I should just go start this company. Now, I give you that backstory because everybody has ideas about going and doing something, but at some point it sinks in that you have no idea, you have no experience in an industry, and you really don't know what you're doing. And that was me. So I had plenty of doubts. I had, some failures along the way in building the company too. I certainly had fears, but I don't know about you, but when you get this little surge of, I should just go do this, and then you think, okay, this is a good idea, and you're sort of in it, and then all of a sudden you're like, wait, what am I doing? I'm really scared of this. Like, what if I fail? What if I do all these things? And you mentioned my book, and it's a lot of what I talk about in my book is just really my own stories of having these fears. And as I said, I've had fears, failures, doubts along the way. But what I really believe, and part of the reason I call my book what I do, Undaunted, Overcoming Doubts and Doubters, is that I really feel that, you're going to have the fears, you're going to have the failures along the way in starting a company or just in life, but it's up to you to really take on these challenges and maybe even be a little bit scared on purpose in order to go and grow in some direction. And so that is really my story.
Thank you. However, you did not have inspiration or influence from your parents, right? Because what I loved about the book is you compared a drastic contrast between the mindset of your father and yours. You said your father let his doubts derail his own entrepreneurial ambitions, and you refused to. So, what made you different from your dad? How could you be a risk taker? Because usually you are a product of the influence of your parents most often.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I think I was to some extent. My dad was I call him a frustrated entrepreneur because he worked for a large company. He developed a line of products that some of you may be familiar with called Healthy Choice. But it was inside of a large company, initially Armor Food Company, and they were acquired by a company called ConAgra. And so I watched him as a little girl be very frustrated by, things that, he wanted to develop or ideas. And because he was living in a large company, was kind of told, no, he couldn't do that. It was too risky. It was too this. He couldn't try as much as he wanted to do. I think it was also a different time where he was, he was responsible. I was the last of 5 children. And so he wanted to make sure that he could put food on the table and do these things. Of course, he wasn't sharing that information with me. He wasn't sharing those fears with me of what he really wanted and why he couldn't go and sort of do what he wanted to do because he wanted to, be able to really serve his children, which I think is very noble looking back on it. But certainly, somewhat sad in many ways. And watching that as a child, watching him have so many ideas and yet not being able to really do what he wanted to do and what he was capable of, I think it definitely wore off. I didn't start, as I mentioned, in consumer products. I was, at least in the food space, I was, initially in journalism, actually, and worked for Time Magazine and then CNN, and then ended up going into tech for a small little startup that was a Steve Jobs idea. And in Silicon Valley, that was my first taste of sort of startup land. And then we were acquired by a company called America Online, and I ran the e-commerce and shopping for them for 7 years. And that's when I think I really got the bug, when I went to Silicon Valley and saw how ideas are just about trying and about creativity and about asking a lot of questions. A lot of people ask me, did you always know you wanted to be an entrepreneur, or were you born an entrepreneur? And I've thought about that a lot. I didn't think I was going to be an entrepreneur. I mean, I enjoyed entrepreneurs and I worked for them, but I never thought of it as a path to actually becoming an entrepreneur or founder on my own. And yet I know that there are some entrepreneurs and founders out there, but I think more than anything, you don't have to be born an entrepreneur. You don't have to be 7 years old and saying, I'm going to be an entrepreneur. Or my other favorite one is this theory that you don't want to work for anybody. You're not capable of working for anybody. And so therefore you go start your own company. I don't think that's true either, at least not in my case, but I had an idea. I had a vision for how to solve that idea by creating my own product. And I was curious about how do I get it out there and get it on the market.
Thank you. As I mentioned while we were chatting just before the interview went live, that there are many women listeners to my podcast as well. And what I found really inspiring about this book, of course, I found it inspiring. I wish more successful entrepreneurs write books because it just inspires an entire generation. What I found striking is you have 4 kids, right? You have 4 children. Am I right?
I do.
So I have a lot of conversations with my friends, and most times, the excuse my friends give is, you know what, Ravi, you are ambitious and you are driven because you don't have kid. And I sometimes take that on face value, because maybe I could do all of these things. I do podcasts, I write a lot, because I don't have kids. But I am now going to tell them that, you know what, Kara has 4 kids, and you still can pursue your ambitions and build a company from scratch into making a $150 million empire. So tell us a bit about all those women who think motherhood becomes a hindrance towards something, towards pursuing something as challenging as that. Let me give you an example of what Indra Nui says. My question to you is, does it come at the cost of being a not great a parent? And Indra Nuis, the CEO of PepsiCo, ex-CEO of PepsiCo, was once asked, and she said that she admitted that she was guilty of not being always available mom, and she had her own coping mechanism. So tell us your experience about that. When you started, I think you had 3 kids, and later you had one more. Just let us know your experience of motherhood and becoming a businesswoman.
Yeah, so multiple things come to mind in that question in particular. So I remember when Indra came out with her statement about that, about being a parent. First of all, Indra was running a larger company than me, and also a public company. And I think, when you can ask anybody who is running a public company, while you might be the CEO, you're also working for a board of directors and the public markets. And so I can't speak to that, because we are a private company, and a little bit different situation, although it sounds we're both CEOs of companies, but it is slightly different. The other thing I'll say is that when I started Hint, when I had the idea, I had 3 children under the age of 5. And then I made the commitment. I was curious about this, and I started writing a business plan. And I found out I was pregnant with my 4th. And so I thought, gosh, I'm going to have another child. What am I doing for the next, 6 months? And while I'm incubating my 4th child, of course, I was being a parent as well. But I thought, I'm going to just keep doing some things to make progress. And I had a goal, but I also kind of took it easy on myself to say, hopefully I'll get the company launched prior to having my 4th child. But if I don't, then there's time. And I bring up the word time because I think so often, and particularly entrepreneurs, I see this trait in entrepreneurs, we're in a hurry so much of the time. We put a lot of pressure on ourselves. We are typically very, very good, and maybe not as patient with sort of putting realistic timelines into place. That's not to say that, you say whenever, right? But you take it easy if you're slipping. And especially for me, I thought, I do have this other life. I do want to be around for my children and certainly for my new baby, but I'm also looking at making progress. And that's the most important piece. So I think that the beauty of that process was that I could take my time, because I was my own boss too. And if I needed to slow down, I could pull the levers back. I am not sure how, if you're running a large public company, how you pull the levers back.
Right.
Because I think that there's a lot of other people out there that maybe you do not have communication with. The other thing that I'll say is actually share a story that I talk about in the book, which is my son Keenan, who is now 18 years old. I'll never forget when he was 12 years old, he saw Sheryl Sandberg on television talking about her Lean In initiative and how women are not CEOs. And we're sitting at the dinner table, and he said, "Mom, I just learned that women aren't CEOs." And I thought, oh my gosh, do I have to deal with my 12-year-old son on this topic now? And I didn't know what to say. And so I let him continue talking. And he said, "I don't really understand it, because you've been a CEO my whole life, and it seems great." And I thought, okay, we'll leave it at that. The next day he came back, and he plays a lot of tennis, and he came back from school, and he said, "Mom, why is it that girls' teams and boys' teams are separate? Because there are girls that are on the girls' team that are better tennis players than some of the boys on my team. And
Right.
I would really enjoy playing with them." And I said, "Well, I don't know the answer to that, but you should go and work on that." And he said, "I think I will, because it just doesn't make any sense. It should be based on athletic ability. It shouldn't be based on gender."
Right.
The and so at that point, I had a very, big realization, which was, while I, at times, beat myself up wondering, "Should I be working? Should I be doing all of these things?" What I realized is that what my children are seeing is that women can be CEOs, and
Lovely.
that they can still talk to me and have relationships and ask me questions that maybe the rest of the world does not actually say is the real world. Yet I thought, just by example, I can actually, and what I saw was, show my children that it is possible and
Nice.
that it can be. It might not be the perfect situation for every mother or parent to be working the way that I have worked and grown a company, right? But I think that it definitely is possible. And I think what I've created just last bit, I have 3 in university now, and I have 1 in high school, 2 girls and 2 boys. And there are so many things in this company that we have done that have been sort of, not the way it's supposed to be. I'm working on a huge initiative in Washington, D.C. right now on clean water. And my son just said to me, yesterday, he said, "Mom, if you get this to Washington and you're actually arguing for cleaner water rights in Washington, can I leave university for a couple of days and come and hear you argue before Congress about this? Because I think I could learn a lot from it." And he
Nice.
said, "Maybe I'll bring a couple of friends with me if we could." And so what I realized is that just by doing, I can be the example for them.
Got it. Got it. Yeah. So the fear always is you might not be a likable mother for your kids, but you are giving an example where they are so proud of what you have achieved, and in fact, they want to come and attend. Usually, children run away from their parents; they have got nothing to do with their parents. But here, your son wants to come and see you speak. Excellent. So my question to you is, what has building this massive empire given you, and in terms of personal growth, so success, opportunities, wealth, etc. What would you not have received if you had not taken the plunge?
I think every day I'm learning, which is just another piece that I think about a lot. That as an entrepreneur, I'm sure you feel the same way. You're constantly learning, right? I mean, even podcasting, I mean, you're constantly learning about new pieces and components. And I think that it's something that I've thought a lot about just as we get older, as we get more experience. So often our roles are about teaching and mentoring and managing, which is wonderful. But in addition, I think we so often lose the ability and the time to actually sit back and learn. And yet I feel that the happiest people today are really the ones that are learning and are being able to take time to go learn. And that doesn't mean, although it could mean going back to school. It could mean just going on YouTube and actually learning how to do something, or taking on something that might be a little scary. Maybe you fear it a little bit. And so I think that that is something that I think about a lot, that it really is about, taking on new things and seeing what you can accomplish. And that's really the most important piece for me today.
So what you're saying is your decision to start Hint Waters has been the biggest contribution has been it has made you a learning woman, right? You have learned massively.
I've learned constantly every single day. And as I said before, I mean, working on an initiative around clean water, I didn't know anything about water other than the fact that I drink it and it comes out of my shower 16 years ago. Today, I know a lot about water worldwide. I know quite a bit about water and quality and regulations and, and really, frankly, a lot of just by curiosity and having to be put into situations and asking why, for example, we have 8 different plants throughout the US, and just even alone in the US, how the quality just depends on what part of the US it's actually produced in. And
Right.
so things like that, I think, just make you a better person because you get up every single morning and you're thinking about things, right? People have often, you mentioned children too, people have often said to me, how do you have a work-life balance?
Right.
And, by working and having these kids, I've actually brought my kids into many of my learnings, and
Right.
not everything. I mean, I have enough, EQ to understand when my kids aren't interested in hearing about it. But when I talk to them about their day and they ask me about my day and I talk to them about what I learned today, so often they have all kinds of questions because they're so curious, right? And I've seen that actually in some of their papers that they've written, that they'll talk about these things at very top level. So again, I think just bringing people into the conversation, you don't exactly know what is going to happen, but I think it's something for me that it's through learning, I'm actually becoming not only a better parent, but also a better manager and also a better mentor in many
Right.
ways on how to create change in some way.
Excellent. So, my question to you is what would be your advice to people who have this fear of failure towards taking the plunge on entrepreneurship when they're already very comfortable with a stable income and a decent job, but they have this silent desperation that they could do much more. However, the fear of failure does not help them take that plunge. What would be your advice to them, and how did you take that plunge? Because you had children, you had kids, you had a decent salary, you had a secure
Yeah.
job, and you still went ahead.
I think you need to make a conscious decision that you want to go and do something. And so often, there are so many people today who are doing, especially during this pandemic, doing kind of a side hustle, doing a little test to try and figure out on their weekend time to try and figure out if something is possible and sort of test it out to actually see whether or not it could actually be a product or a company or a service. And I think that the second thing is asking yourself the question, is this your destination? Is this what you want to be known for? That you're
Mm.
making a great salary and, and that you always wondered whether or not you could do something else or you could try something else. If it's really sitting with you on a constant basis, as it was with me when I figured out how I never thought about starting a beverage company, but when I saw that a beverage actually in my kitchen allowed me to change my health, I
Right.
thought I could actually develop something that could
Right.
not just change my health, but also
Right.
change my family's health and
Right.
change everyone's health who was
Right.
having a problem drinking plain water. And
Right.
so that's a powerful thing. If you can start a company that
Mhm.
actually helps people, who wouldn't want to do that?
Right.
Right? I mean, it's such a powerful mission and purpose. And I think that is where there's a lot of different types of companies, right? But I think that when we talk about mission and purpose driven companies and,
Right.
you know, 70% of the workforce today worldwide are millennials. And if you ask millennials who they want to go and work for and what they want to do, they want to work for a company that has purpose, that has mission,
Right.
right? And the reason is that they want to do something to better
Right.
society.
Mm.
And I believe that's true in any country that you're speaking to. So again, I'm not saying everybody has to start a mission-driven company, but if you do, it it's it is it has a good feeling to it for
Right.
sure.
Right. You mentioned about a mission-driven company. You also talked about there is a chapter called "Find Your Personal Path." What does finding your personal path mean, and how can one find that?
Yeah, I think it's figuring out what you enjoy doing and as part of it. So it's one thing to have an idea, and I think that you should also understand how you're going to get from point A to point Z, as I always think about it. But as you start to grow the company, as just as an example, supply chain and logistics, I understood it from a top level,
Right.
but to be honest with you, it wasn't really my interest, right?
Right.
I was much more about brand and about messaging and much more on the marketing and the product side and what I wanted to achieve.
Right.
And when I actually talked to my husband, who was an intellectual property attorney, about this idea that I had, I wasn't asking for his permission, but I was letting him know that I was removing $50,000 out of our bank account, which I had made in my previous company, and that I wanted to start a company with. I thought it'd be a good idea to share this, topic with him so he didn't think I was going on some great vacation or something. And he said to me, I don't think this is necessarily the best idea that you've ever had, given that you're very marketable in tech, but I understand why you're interested in doing this. And he said, but tell me more about the logistics and the supply chain. And so he immediately I called him free labor for the first, few months, because he was very interested in that
Right.
side of it. Again, he's an intellectual property attorney. He was
Right.
not he didn't have any experience other than the fact that he was used to asking a lot of those detailed questions. And so he
Right.
wanted to jump in and ask these questions. And frankly, I didn't have all the answers, but
Right.
he took that on early
Right.
on. And then he ended up becoming our chief operating officer. So
Mm.
he always talks about himself as a recovering attorney,
Right.
because he realized that it was much more his creative side came out in this, where he's able to not only figure out a lot of the logistics, but he's been working on, he removed 40% of plastic from our bottles.
Ah.
And he automated a lot of the manufacturing that we do as well, so that there aren't people in the room when we're actually filling our preservative-free product. Things
Right.
that, again, he was curious about. But
Right.
again, going back to your initial question, finding somebody, they don't have to be a co-founder, they don't have to be your husband, but somebody that has skills that I can't even say that you don't have, but maybe they just want to do that every single day. And
Right.
it's something that I've also looked at in building out my whole company. I think
Right.
as a founder, if you don't understand, for example, what a business plan is,
Right.
or how to read a business plan, go learn. Like, there's enough tools out there today to show you online how to go and learn this,
Right.
right?
Right.
But that doesn't mean when you start to scale that you shouldn't have somebody who runs finance, who runs, is a controller, again, at different levels, that really loves money and finance and that. And so again, having people in, you should always, as the founder and CEO, understand every single aspect of this company. I know
Right.
how to code, I know how to do SEO, I know how to do a lot in this company,
Right.
but it's not where I'm, like, most interested. There are people that are better utilized
Right.
doing these skills, and that's how I've hired for these. So that's what I mean by that, and I think it's such an important piece. It's so many founders, I think, make the mistake by hiring people that are too much like them, that like the same things that they like,
Got
and
it.
and I think it's a recipe for disaster.
Got it. I had a similar question to that. I said, how does one compensate for the lack of certain strengths? And most people who do not take that plunge is because they think that they do not have
Mhm.
all of it that is required to be a founder or to be a CEO. But what you are saying is you also did not have all the strengths and the knowledge and the skills, but you still took the plunge and then you compensated for your lack of skills by hiring these people who knew more than you. Am I right?
Yes. And also I'll also point out that I think you hire for those skills. You
Mhm.
don't necessarily hire in the same industry. Because what I've realized along the way is that just because somebody, for example, is a CFO of a large beverage company, let's say Pepsi,
Mhm.
we are so small in comparison. I mean, we're getting there and growing significantly, but we're not a multi-billion dollar company.
Right.
They may not have the skills to come into your company
Right.
and actually do the same things because the programs were already set up. So I always say to people, for many of these roles, especially early, it's more important to find somebody who is at your stage. And,
Right.
I always call them, I don't need somebody who really understands beverages because I understand beverages now, but I
Right.
need somebody who understands widgets,
Mhm.
right? And that's what I think is so true across the board. You need somebody who is used to dealing, in the case of Hint, somebody who's used to dealing with physical goods. It
Right.
could literally be somebody who has been looking at hammers all day long and worked for a hardware company. It doesn't matter, right? It's about skills and about stages. So it's about hiring somebody, understanding what stage you're in. Are you in 0 to 10 million? Are you in 10 million to 100 million? I think that
Right.
that is so critical.
Right. So the other thing about entrepreneurship is we get to hear only the success stories. There are a lot of failures that never surface. So how do you how do you manage that fear of failure and still go ahead? I know I asked this question again, but my question is, there's a price, there is a psychological price or that you pay to go into uncharted territory. Of course, you eventually succeeded. Of course, you had your own share of dark phases, because I think in one of your chapters you mentioned about the 2018 Lehman Brothers crisis, where you had to vacate your office space and your partners and retailers demanded discounts, the threat of Whole Foods taking Hint off the shelf. So you had your own share of dark days. But tell me, how does one reconcile the fact that you could massively fail in your business?
I think that the most important thing that you need to keep reminding yourself about is your successes, because you will always have, call them challenges, call them failures, call them disruption along the way, but you have to keep reminding yourself about your successes that you've accomplished, that maybe initially you didn't actually know whether or not you were going to be able to achieve those things. I've always had a problem with the saying, forget about that, or don't look back, because I've always felt that you can actually learn quite a bit from maybe hard times and challenging times, and maybe there's a lot that you couldn't have done anything about, but always there's probably a little that you could have. One of the stories that I share in the book, you mentioned a few of the stories. One of the stories that many people have reminded me of is a story with a brand that many of you are familiar with called Starbucks. And when we got into Starbucks, we were very excited. We were in 11,000 locations, and we went to the team at Starbucks and we said, "What is success?" Great question, right? We said, what do we need to sell in order to achieve success?
Right.
And the Starbucks buyer said, well, in 6 months from now, you need to be at this point. So we achieved that. And then we kept growing from there. By the end of a year and a half, we finally were at 3x what we were supposed to be doing quite well. I was very comfortable. It was about 40% of our overall business for the company.
Right.
We received a phone call from a buyer at Starbucks, a brand new buyer, and she said, "I'm very sorry to tell you this, but you are being removed from all of the Starbucks locations." And I
Wow.
said, "You must be thinking about another brand. I mean, we're doing great."
Right.
And she said, "No, unfortunately, we've changed business direction and we're going to be putting food in the case that
Mm.
has a higher ring and a higher margin business.
Right.
And I'm very sorry." And I said, "When?" And she said, "In 2 weeks." I said,
Wow.
2 weeks. And I had inventory in my warehouse.
Right.
And I thought, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? I
Mm.
don't cry very often, but I cried at that point. When I got off the phone, I cried. I thought, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? And then I realized at that point that I had made a very critical error. And that was that 40% of our overall business was sitting in the hands of someone who could make a strategic business decision for themselves.
Yes.
And it hurt really bad, and it was challenging, and I didn't know what I was gonna do. I had to think about was how was I gonna go back to investors and tell investors that I was gonna have to destroy product that I had sitting in a warehouse that was gonna go bad. It was a bad day, right?
Right.
Suddenly, this was about 2 weeks after that we had this product in the warehouse and we were removed from Starbucks, we got an email from Amazon.
Mm.
And Amazon said, "We're starting a grocery business, a grocery delivery business, and we would really like to have you in part of our selection. And
Mm.
by the way, I love your product hint, and I buy it every morning with my coffee at Starbucks." And
Wow.
so I thought at that point, do I tell this buyer that we're not in there anymore? Obviously, he hasn't noticed.
Mhm.
And he wanted to know how quickly he could get the product into his warehouse. So I
Right.
phoned him up and I said, actually, we have an overrun of product, and I'd be happy to send you a truckload today.
Mhm.
And he said, "Great. Here's my wiring information, and it's all done." So then we became the number one product in Amazon grocery within a few
Wow.
short weeks. And I remember, really excited about this business. We're still not in Starbucks.
Right.
Right? We had still been removed from Starbucks,
Right.
and that was when the Starbucks buyer said to me, "Your product is different than other sodas and other beverages that we have because the consumer is buying things like diabetes monitors and sort of healthier. It has like a health halo
Right.
over it that is different than some of these other, soda companies."
Right.
And I said, "Oh, that's fascinating. I'd love to email some of the people, some of the customers." And they said, "Jeff Bezos owns that information. You'll never be able to email the people." And they said, "And none of your retailers allow you
Mm.
to email them either." And it
Right.
was at that point that I thought a few things. Number one, that Starbucks relationship
Right.
got me into the next relationship.
Right.
Right?
Right.
The other thing is that after that conversation with the Amazon buyer,
Right.
I then decided if I wanted information and data and emails on my customers,
Yeah.
all of these retailers thought it was their customer because I was wholesaling product to them. I
Right.
needed to launch my own direct to consumer site. So
Right.
we did that 7 years ago, and
Mhm.
that business is now 55% of our overall business is
Okay.
directly out of our business. We still sell to Amazon, we still sell to lots of retailers, but we
Right.
know what the restrictions are.
Right.
And by the way, if we're ever removed from these retailers,
Right.
as we were with Starbucks,
Right.
I can figure out how to move forward because I have other options.
Right.
And so I think that just it goes full circle. When you have challenges,
Right.
try and go and learn from the learnings
Right.
and don't stop. I mean, that's what we saw, frankly, with so many people,
Mhm.
and really the difference between the successful entrepreneurs and the ones that had a really challenging year last year were the ones that had reasons to stop, and they couldn't keep moving forward. They
Right.
didn't have other options, and they
Right.
couldn't pivot.
Right.
And when I look back on, these challenges, this the challenges that I've had in the last 15 years made
Right.
me a better leader in 2020 as we were all dealing with the pandemic as well, because I knew that I needed to have enough money in the bank, that I needed to have options when some businesses that we were dealing with were challenged. I needed to figure out how I was going to make up for that. Our business did, our direct to consumer business tripled
Mhm.
since March when the pandemic hit the United States,
Yeah.
and our overall business was up 50%.
Nice.
So again, all of those really tough challenges that I talk about in the book, and frankly, all the successes
Right.
allow me to be what I am today and do what I am not only as a business CEO, but also as a leader. And I think that that is the most important thing for people to know is that these challenges are part of your journey.
Got it.
And and you have to have faith that they will help you prepare for something much bigger, whether it's a pandemic or
Right.
some other challenges in the future.
Thank you. Let's talk a bit about ambition. So, when you built Hint Waters, did you have a vision of how big you want to make it, or did you not have any such vision? Um, I also want to know your journey towards making your first million, and then when did you think about this could actually scale to 100 million or 150 million? Tell us a bit about ambition. Like, are you driven towards scale and make it big, or is that not your core value?
I think that my core value is really building something that has purpose, that has I want to solve problems for my customers. Somebody asked me the other day, what keeps you up at night? And customers, trying to understand trends and how people are thinking about purchasing,
Right.
right? Do they go to grocery stores? Are they buying online? How much, does that weigh on people? Are there services that they're using instead of actually walking into stores?
Right.
Things like that are what I think about. And I think that if you get a lot of those things right, then
Mhm.
the rest follows, right?
Right.
If you look at what the customer, and as I have always, I frequently go back to something that Steve Jobs said around customers. I think people asked him, I won't have his exact quote, but people asked him, do you ask customers
Right.
what they want?
Right.
And Steve had said, no, you don't. You actually figure out what they want.
Right.
And you do that by solving problems. And I think that that's how I think about Hint too, that we were, it's fascinating because the majority of our consumers, while we are a water company, the majority of our consumers are coming from drinks like what I was addicted to, diet soda. And also there's another great drink out there, that great brand, I should say, called vitamin water, where a lot of these people who were drinking those drinks really wanted health, right? The word diet, the word vitamin ends up kind of bringing a health uh, light bulb into people's head that they think they're going to get health.
Right.
There must be something healthy in here because those are words sort of are, healthy perception, right? But the reality is that a lot of people, and not everybody, have figured out that they're not really getting what they want out of those drinks. And so those are the people that are coming over to our drinks. So I think that it really, I would say, in answer to your question, it's less about thinking, I'm going to make this $1 billion company, right? It was more about how can I actually help people get healthier? And if I can do that, then the rest will come.
That is fascinating, no? Because most people are driven by scale, but you have a very interesting way to look at it. So if you're solving enough problems for enough number of people, then numbers will take care of themselves. But I would like to let you know, because you must be also talking to other entrepreneurs of your ilk. What does it take to become a successful entrepreneur of a say $100 million business? What does it take? Because it's easy, and there is a lot in the bottom of the pyramid. A lot of people start companies, but what does it take to take it to 100 million?
I think that there are a number of components. I think it starts with curiosity and thinking about your customer, no matter what industry you're in. coming up and really understanding what's around you and what the problem is and potentially what the solve is for that. Then I think it's as I always say to people, ideas are the saying, ideas are a dime a dozen. If that saying, resonates with anybody, but your ability to execute and hire people that actually at different stages help you to get to that next level. The people who will help you typically go from 0 to 1 million or 1 million to 10 million even are probably different people than who will take you from 50 million to 100 million. And so understanding at different stages along the way, it doesn't mean that you get rid of these people, right? It's just that they may have a boss, right? And they may not enjoy it too. I know people who have worked for Hint in the early days and were very proud of what they had built, and then went and found another company that was in early stages because they love early stage companies. And there's nothing wrong. I share this with entrepreneurs all the time. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just you have to do what you've got to do in order to scale the company. And so I think it's really just focusing on what is needed for the company at the time. I think that the other thing that people get really bogged down in growing a company that can really really sink a company, frankly, is imposter syndrome and thinking, okay, I've got to go faster. I've got to do this in order to compete in some way. And so often, I learned from an organization called EY that I was one of the EY entrepreneurs a few years ago. And I remember learning a really important lesson from EY when they asked me the question, how much time do you spend outside of the office? And I said, I'm an entrepreneur. I spend all my time in the office. I'm here all the time, right? And they said, but how much time are you outside networking and learning with people on how to grow your business, including how to make your teams better? So the amount of time today that and again, thank goodness for Zoom now, because I'm not meeting with a lot of these people in person, and really that has opened up so many doors to meeting with people worldwide on topics. But finding the best technology, finding the best services for the company, that is your role as a leader too, and as a CEO. And so I think it's recognizing so many founders, I think, cannot unfortunately, there are a number that can, but founders typically cannot move to those 100 million levels that you're talking about. That's why there are a lot of founders who are not still in, they may still be at the company, but maybe there's another CEO who's come in, because the key is being able to recognize, what do I need in order to build at these different levels?
Got it. Excellent. I'm being mindful of the time here. Quickly, I have last two questions. Let's talk about the premise of your book. What does it mean to be undaunted, and why is that your overarching message to the reader?
So undaunted to me means knowing that certainty is not necessarily better, right? That take those chances, be a little bit uncomfortable, because if you are a little bit uncomfortable and maybe putting that into every single day, a little bit of uncertainty, not really sure exactly how this is going to turn out. I might have fears, I might have failures. That's going to allow you to succeed and grow and move forward. And that is living undaunted.
Excellent. And my last question to you is, if you had to live your life all over again, how differently would you have lived it?
I would not have lived it differently. I'm really enjoying what I'm doing. And frankly, I'm enjoying my journey. I would say that the thing that is so fun for me is really looking back and connecting the dots, because I think so often it's difficult to look at situations one-on-one. And frankly, this is in life, this is in work. But now I look back and I'd say, that's why I was in that role. That's why I was put into this situation. It was a learning experience, right? That's why I was going through the pandemic and all these things. I mean, if you can't sort of appreciate them for something, right? Then I'm not sure that's really living.
Right. Excellent. Well, this brings us to the end of a fascinating conversation with Kara. Thank you, Kara, for your time. And I also wanted to know, bonus question here, what is the secret of your energy? I mean, you are effervescent and you're vibrant and you have this energy. I'm sure this is not the only podcast you're talking to, but you carry this energy. What is the secret of that?
So the secret sauce is all in the signs back here. It's just as soon as you have the neon signs, then you have all the energy. You have all the energy in the world. So, and hopefully, you don't take yourself too seriously. I think more than anything. And I know you did the audio version of the book, which is available worldwide. But this is the book here. It's called Undaunted: Overcoming Doubts and Doubters. It's available on Amazon. For worldwide, but also through Audible as well. And hopefully you'll all stop by, and hopefully you'll get a chance to read the book, but you'll stop by and see me on social. I'm at Kara Goldin with an I. It's KaraGoldin.
Excellent, Kara. Thank you again.
Thank you so much, everyone. Have a great weekend.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.